All right, welcome to the third episode of Meet Adelaide, and my guest this evening is Shane Sody. Now, Shane is an avid cyclist. He holds a couple of world records, I believe. Only one world record. We'll go into that. He rode 151 kilometres today, but he's also the president of the Adelaide Parklands Association, and he is one of the most determined people that I've met who's in the political sphere. You're a strong advocate for the parklands and quite an inspiration to me, the way that you pursue this vision and your commitment and passion for something. And I found that absolutely inspired me from when I first met you as well. So welcome, Shane. Thanks for being on my show.
Thank you very much for having me. That's very kind words.
No. Well, Shane, let's start off. So I want to hear a little bit about your background, where you came from and growing up and your early life. So where'd you grow up? Did you grow up in Adelaide or?
No, well, I'm 66 years old, so I've got a lot of backstory. Born in 1956. Yeah. Judith Durham died yesterday, and she was like the soundtrack to my childhood. That's like totally apropos of nothing, but yeah.
I don't know who that is.
The Seekers. 1960s, Hey There, Georgie Girl, The Carnival is Over, all those songs.
The only Seekers I know play Quidditch.
Okay. Well, it's sort of, nostalgia isn't what it used to be, they say, but that just took me back to my childhood and all those songs that were so big in the 1960s. All right, now I'm really showing my age. Yeah. Okay, I grew up in Melbourne, and I only came to Adelaide when I was 16 years old with my family. We lived at Unley, right opposite the Unley football ground. My father used to get on the roof of our house to watch Sturt play across the road at Unley Oval.
So we didn't have to pay for a ticket?
Yeah. Isn't that amazing? From
Did
the
he
roof
have
of the
binoculars
house
as well?
I think so.
Yeah, great.
I wasn't game enough to get up on the roof with him.
Yeah, right. There you go.
But yeah, that was our introduction to Adelaide in the that would have been when I was 1972.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so why'd they move?
Oh, from Victoria. I don't know. God, that's going so far back, I can't remember. Right. But yeah, anyway, the family came over here then. And we loved Adelaide, fell in love with it. And I left home when I was 18 and I travelled around Australia working in radio stations.
Sure.
And then eventually came back to Adelaide to settle in 1985. And I've been here ever since.
Yeah, right. So you would have had like a whole friendship group and everything when you were 16 coming to Adelaide. What was it like moving here and then going to Unley High, I'm guessing?
No, when I came to Adelaide, I'd already left high school. I left high school
So
pretty early. I was a dropout.
Oh, great.
Yeah. I later went back to... I did university when I was 35.
Right. What did you study?
I have an arts degree and a law degree.
Oh, me too.
First class honours, Adelaide
I did
Uni.
not get first class honours.
Well, one thing you know about me, when I'm determined to do something, I do it all the way. There's no sort of half measures. So I thought if I'm going to go to university, I want a law degree, and I don't just want any law degree. I want first class honours. So I did what I had to do to get that.
See, I'm an outcomes focused person. Yeah. So for me, P's get degrees. But yeah, I did. So what did you do in your arts? I guess you would have done media or?
No. Well, having had a long experience in media, in commercial radio and a tiny little bit in TV, but nearly exclusively.
At 35, yeah.
Yeah, commercial radio from my early 20s.
Yeah.
I didn't need to study that at uni. I studied art subjects that just appealed to me.
Great.
I wanted a law degree, and at that stage, I don't know whether it's still the case, but you can't get a law degree unless you had another degree at the university. So I thought, well, I'll just do what appeals to me.
Sure.
So I studied philosophy and psychology and Japanese language and Asian history.
Great.
Yeah.
So I did philosophy and economics. And economics would have killed me if I did as a major. Yeah. So my philosophy actually massively softened my economics degree. So I didn't have to do any of the math subjects. Even though I'm a tax lawyer, I didn't do it. I'm not great at maths, right? So I did words instead. But why'd you do the law degree at 35? Did you want to transition to become a lawyer? Or?
Oh yeah. I was news director at 5AD and 5DN.
Okay.
And I had no qualifications as a journalist.
Right.
I was very experienced as a journalist, but no formal qualifications.
Yeah.
Back then you could do that. You could just come up through the ranks. And I was getting to the stage where I was hiring and firing journalists, and the ones who were coming to me for a job all had degrees in journalism. And I thought, this is a bit weird. Here I am with no qualifications, and I'm assessing people with qualifications. And it just occurred to me that sooner or later, with no qualifications, they're going to turf me out and bring in somebody younger with a qualification, and then I'll have no skill to fall back on.
Okay.
There was no sort of career advancement beyond news director. So I said, I need a qualification. What would I be good at? A veterinarian?
Yeah, a veterinarian. That's definitely the next progression.
When you're a kid, you want to be a fireman, or a sign writer or whatever. But no, I decided that my skills were best suited to studying law.
Fantastic, yeah.
So I did.
Yeah, right. And and did you use the degree after that, or you just used it as that?
I have this arc of, because I'm 66 and I've been, around for a while, I have this arc of experience in my career, and the starting point and the ending point look really weird, but each of the transitions of my life makes sense in its own terms. So I started off as a rock and roll disc jockey.
Knowing your brother, I was seeing your brother play, I can understand that.
My brothers are, my brother Brett Sody has Sody Pop Studios. He's a recording engineer, and he's in the South Australian Music Hall of Fame.
Really?
He's a legendary music.
That's the one that played at the Parkland Association.
And he played at the Unpaving Paradise.
Yeah, that's right. He was awesome.
Fundraiser. Yeah, well, that's his side.
I couldn't believe it. I was looking at you're a spitting image of him. I can't believe you're a twin. He's just got long hair, and I'm like, it's cool, Shane.
Yeah, cool Shane, and
cool Shane.
And he's also
amazing.
2 years younger than me. Yeah, but playing in a band is his side hustle.
Yeah,
his main hustle is being the go-to guy if you want something recorded.
Yeah, great. So, well, I'm in a band actually with my producer Handol Kim here. So we're working on that. We only play at law society gigs or step conferences. So after, wills and estates practitioners get together, then we play a couple of tunes. But we're still working on our first gig, aren't we? Yeah, the force majeures. That's what we call. Yeah, which is code. That's like that's overwhelming legal force.
Yes, yep. legal jargon.
Yep, but it also means like basically a dog ate my homework. So that's a legal term for something went bad and it's not my fault.
That's your excuse for not doing it.
Yeah, that's right.
Force majeure, act of God.
Well, so I'm intrigued. Yeah, I find that interesting that you went and did the degree after you after all that time, because it's interesting. Most like the really successful people in life do start their degrees and they drop out and then they don't ever finish it. So they just go, this is what I want to do, and then they start pursuing that. Like
So I dropped out of high school at age 15 and went to university at age...
What did your parents say about that?
That's a long story, and we don't. And because it's so long ago, we don't need to go into that.
Sure.
There's a lot of water under the bridge
sure.
since then. But I went to university at age 35, so there was a 20-year gap in formal education. And it took me 10 years to get the law degree from age 35 to age 45.
Yeah, great. Yep.
And I was working... And this is where the Parklands come in.
Right, yeah.
Because I was working at the time as personal advisor, consultant, PA, media advisor to the Honourable Ian Gilfillan, MLC, who was with the Australian Democrats. He was a member of the upper house of state parliament. Yep. And Ian was the best boss I've ever had. He was really, really gracious in that I was studying law part-time and the requirements of your law degree change every semester.
Sure.
Like on Tuesdays, you've got
Different
to be in associations lecture, and on Thursdays, you might be in a trusts tute. And so I would go to Ian and say, look, this semester I have to change my work days.
Yep.
Do you mind? And he was always accommodating, which was brilliant. So right through the law degree, I was changing my work days with Ian to suit the studies in my law degree. But it was a two-way thing, because what I was studying in law was valuable for him in some of the political things he was doing. And the two fed each other. And around about the time I was doing my honours dissertation, there was a huge court case going on between the Conservation Council of South Australia and the tuna boat operators.
Oh, those tuna boat, those people.
Yes. Well, and
are they a big thing? Or?
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, it's a massive industry at Port Lincoln.
Right, yeah.
They harvest not fully grown tuna in the Southern Ocean and tow. Well, I'm telling you what used to happen around about the year 2000. I don't know if it's changed since then, but they would tow the tuna back and fatten them up in feedlots off Port Lincoln.
I think they still do that in Whyalla as well.
And, these fully grown tuna were selling back in the year 2000 or 1999 for over $1,000 per fish in the Japanese sashimi market.
Yeah.
So it was a license to print money.
Yeah.
And that was my honours dissertation.
That's still happening.
My honours dissertation was about the legal framework that allowed that to happen.
Amazing.
And what, if anything, should be done to regulate both the environmental effects on the seafloor in Port Lincoln and also the fact that people who had inherited the right to take what was not an endangered species, but a species that is subject to dwindling stock, what was the legal the legal framework around that.
Right.
So that was my honours dissertation, and that fed into a parliamentary inquiry that was going on with the Environment, Resources and Development Committee of State Parliament.
Amazing.
On which Ian Gilfillan, my boss, was serving as one of the members of that committee.
So useful for him.
Yeah, so my research was helping that inquiry, and that inquiry was helping my honours dissertation.
Yeah. Wow, that's cool. The two are going simultaneously.
Yeah. So
what was the outcome?
I can't remember.
Yeah, sure.
Well, not long after my honours dissertation was finished in the year 2000, there was a new Aquaculture Act.
Okay.
So that basically made my honours dissertation irrelevant very soon after I had finished it.
Isn't that
out of date?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, isn't it funny how people do PhDs in the most obscure things?
Yeah.
And you're all contributing to human knowledge, I suppose, at the time.
We were, and for all I know, it might have my research might have informed some of the subsequent legislative changes.
For sure. Wow, how fascinating. Was that your first foray into, well, I guess being a disc jockey and being involved in radio and the news, you were always involved in politics.
To a greater or lesser extent, and I was interviewing politicians. I've got, you don't list all the people you interviewed, but I remember one of the very first days on my job in my very first spot as a journalist, I was interviewing Joe Bjelke-Petersen, who at the time was the Premier of Queensland.
Yeah.
I just rang him up at home, as you did back then.
Right, and that was his name's probably on this internet page.
Well, we didn't have internet pages back then, but
it was pre-internet. Wow.
Well before. I'm talking 1979.
Yeah, right.
But yeah. I interviewed lots and lots of politicians, so I was familiar with the environment, and then I went to work for a politician later on, or several politicians. I worked for not only Ian Gilfillan, but I was for a time the media advisor to a Liberal Environment Minister,
really, okay.
David Watton, in 1997. And then after I got my law degree, I was a legal advisor to the Labor Attorney General at the time, Michael Atkinson.
Wow.
That wasn't a political appointment, that was a public service appointment. So I was one of a team of...
You were in the department?
Policy and legislation section in the Attorney General's department.
Mm-hmm. And have you always had that focus on the environment? And what kind of developed that passion for it?
Well, I don't know whether I could say that I've always had that focus, but it's become...
It's grown on you?
It's grown on me as the most important thing because, we've only got one world. There is no planet B. We're doing a very good job of messing up the planet. And it desperately needs protection because so many people have a short-term monetary interest in despoiling the planet or a part thereof, whether it's the atmosphere with carbon emissions or whether it's wanting to build something on what is open green public parkland. Somebody's got and where there's a pot of money to be made, what's the saying? You don't stand in between a developer and a pot of money, or maybe it's a politician and a pot of money.
Yeah, in a green field.
So when there's that financial interest, it's very one-sided.
Yeah, sure.
The people who are trying to protect something for the public, if you're saying something for the public interest, by definition, you don't have huge corporate interests behind you. You've got to raise money through small donations. You've got to continuously hustle, continuously try to get your point of view or the public interest into people's consciousness. And if you're not spending thousands of dollars or millions of dollars on an advertising campaign...
That's so difficult, I think. I really admire everything you've put together with the Adelaide Parklands Association because it's without that kind of continuous and dogged determination, you just wouldn't get there. And because you don't have that large resources that you do if you're a developer, you've done 100 projects before, and so now you're going to do something
Mm.
else, and you've got all the resources there and all the staff, all the systems, everything. And as a small community group, you don't have any of that.
Well, let's talk about the Adelaide Parklands Association.
Absolutely.
I've been the president since 2017.
How'd you come into
5
that?
years. Well, that goes back to Ian Gilfillan.
Right, okay.
MLC, Democrats. He was, when I knew him, back in the 20 years ago or less than that, actually, he was the president of what was then called the Adelaide Parklands Preservation Association. And he was on the committee, and he said, look, since I did you such, he didn't say this, but when he asked me to join the committee, I felt a sense of obligation.
Which year was this in?
Oh, that would have been 2014.
2014, okay.
So it was a long time after I'd stopped working for him, because I stopped working for him about 2001.
And he still reckoned you owed him?
No. He didn't say I owed him.
Oh, okay, yeah.
I felt a sense of obligation since he had really, really helped me so wonderfully in helping me to get my law degree.
Oh, okay.
So when he said, look, would you like to join the Parklands committee? I said, okay. I felt I owed him that. And I just joined the committee and I lurked.
Yeah,
as you do.
Yeah.
I was doing the minimum. I was turning up to a committee meeting once a month, and putting my 2 cents worth in at the committee meeting, and that was it.
Yeah.
And then it dawned on me in 2014 that this little group of people were trying to influence the outcome for the Adelaide Parklands, and were not having much success because they were basically talking amongst themselves. They at great expense printed a glossy quarterly magazine which got posted to their members only.
Yeah.
So it was only the people who were already committed Parklands.
A little bit of an echo chamber.
It was totally an echo chamber.
Yeah.
And a very small echo chamber at that.
Yeah.
And I realised that if anything was going to, there's no point doing that. You've got to reach out to a broader audience and help the broader audience see why the Adelaide Parklands, and this comes back to, it eventually dawned on me, not the first week or the first month or even the first year, it got through to me that the Adelaide Parklands are world unique. We're the only city in the world built inside a park.
Yeah.
And later on I discovered, and this is actually a contentious point, that the Adelaide Parklands were the first park created for the purposes of being for the public.
Sure.
As opposed to being for royalty.
You sure it wasn't a military thing?
Oh, the military. Can we come back to that?
We
because
can.
that's
we can go back into myths and legends.
That's one of the furphies, common furphies.
But
there's parks all over the world, of course, but most of the old ones, we're talking hundreds of years ago, were created for royalty, nobility, lords of the manor. The phrase "crown land" implies that the crown can enter, and common people can come in only if the Crown says, yes, you can come in today. The Adelaide Parklands, and this coincides with the creation of municipal authorities, the City of Adelaide. So they're created for the public.
Okay.
So there's an argument, and it's really splitting hairs, whether this is the case or not. But I like to use this argument that they were the first parks created for the public.
Yeah, right.
Preceded the creation of Central Park, New York by 18.
That's fascinating, isn't it?
By 18 years. Yeah. And then.
Sorry, say that again. So it preceded the creation of
1837, and of course we're totally glossing over the dispossession of the Kaurna people, and I don't want to do that because, of course, it was a public park for the Kaurna people for thousands and thousands of years. Yeah. But if we just focus on from 1837, European settlement, and that was when the parks...
So that was straight away. That was when the city was designed, those parklands were part of immediate...
Yeah. Colonel Lloyd did the famous survey to, and there's a lovely... illustration of his that he drew up in 1837, saying this is the town square, and we've got North Terrace, South Terrace, East Terrace, West Terrace, and outside the terraces there's parklands. And that was the first place in the world where that had actually been done.
And the four in the middle as well.
And the squares, of course.
Yeah, and then the one straight in the middle, which was very
5 squares in the CBD and 1 square in North Adelaide. So we've got.
You might not answer this, or if there is one, but. It just occurred to me: is there a symbolism between the kind of looks like a dice, really? The
5 dots on a dice.
Yeah, 5 dots on a dice. Was he
There are other cities in the world where that sort of thing, the layout with the squares inside the grid, that's been done. There's a book that I've got at home, of course.
Sure.
You know, Donald Johnson is the author, and it is I can't remember the actual title of the book. Predicting municipal parks or something, and he goes through the history of what cities looked a little bit like Adelaide in the past, were laid out in a similar way to Adelaide, but none of them had the parks all around them. There's a few other cities in the world that have some aspects of that. Christchurch in New Zealand has got parks on 3 sides, and the ocean on the 4th side.
Yeah. Well, see, I grew up in Canberra, and Canberra is basically parks with houses in it.
Yeah.
And they were everywhere. And I just
beautiful city.
Yeah, it is beautiful. And you could drive, like you could get on the bike path from my house, get all the way to Parliament House on a private bike path. And I used to be a rower, so I'd row through, and then we'd have like
a private bike path or
public
bike path.
Yeah, not next to the road, for example. That's what I kind of mean. So it's completely separated off, and it was really thought through at that next level of, you know, what should an ideal city look like. And that, of course, was designed by Burley Griffin. And that, I think, when you have that kind of plan, that vision, that's so amazing. And since the Canberra bushfires, that has also now been encroached on, that vision. So that public thoroughfare through the bike paths and the bike lanes is now being encroached on with suburban suburbs that are just coming out of nowhere. So they're now building on all of these parks, and we're losing all of that.
Sounds a bit familiar, because in Adelaide we've been encroaching on the parklands ever since they were created in 1837.
Why do you think that is?
Because
it baffles me. You know, I don't get it.
Oh well, it upsets me, but it doesn't baffle me.
Yeah,
because every single state government from 1837 on, well, before they were called states, provincial government, sees the parklands as vacant land waiting to be developed. Not all the time, of course, and not at every spot, but chipping away, and every time something's put on the parklands, it's for very good reasons, of course.
You're reminding me of that the YouTube sort.
There's a video that we produced, an animated video called Egypt is Selling the Pyramids.
That's right.
Brick by brick.
I love that.
And, you know, why would you get rid of something that makes a place unique? But we're doing that. We've got the only city in the world built inside a park, and we're getting rid of that park bit by bit by bit.
I think it's always there's always a pressure. The politicians, I believe, in our system, I believe, need to generate political capital by doing things. And I think very rarely, probably more and more so now, given the last federal and state elections, that by, I suppose, not doing something and actually keeping something as it was, you're actually going to get credit for that. Like if a state government, you know, that was their policy. We've done nothing.
Yes.
To develop the parklands. Like that would be actually quite a statement that I think would resonate, in fact.
Well, there are lots of things,
missed, you know?
but you can do lots of things within the parklands without robbing future generations. And look, a great example is the new wetlands that's been constructed just in the last 12 months.
It's amazing.
In Victoria Park, Pakabakanthi in the Kaurna language. Now, that was a $13 million project. They had to remove a stand of white poplar trees, invasive species. No big deal there. But what they've created is something beautiful, and it's open, green, public. And it cost only a fraction of what a huge infrastructure project would have gone. The former Liberal state government was wanting to build in Helen Mayo Park what they called the Riverbank Arena, a massive stadium, 15,000-seat stadium. It was going to cost in the order of $600 million. $600 million to destroy a park versus 13 million to create a beautiful wetland.
And I went there the other day. I went for a walk around it, and then it's not even developed yet. It's still just in its rudimentary state, but it looks amazing.
And there's going to be some Ghana-inspired artwork installed there to increase the experience. But there's also infrastructure that can be done, which does not. Let me come back to one of the things that the Adelaide Parklands Association insists upon is that the standard for what should be in a park, and this may be blindingly obvious, but until you say it, people have funny ideas of what should be in parks. Open, green, public.
Yep.
Now, we like to portray that as 3 circles in a Venn diagram.
Mm-hmm.
You can have open, you can have green, you can have public. When the 3 interlock, that's the essence of what a park is.
Sure.
You can have things that are open and green, but not public.
Yeah.
You can have things that are open and public, but not green, and so on. So open, green, public, and that's what we've got with the new wetlands in Victoria Park.
Yeah.
The other thing that I think that we keep pushing really hard is something to help people appreciate the fact that it's not just one park here, one park there, and that it's a whole. The whole is much greater than the sum of its parts.
I think that's totally true, because when I'm going through the parklands, it does feel disconnected, and that's obviously because of the roads.
Yes.
Yeah, and you don't think you generally think about the botanical gardens and maybe where the pedal pre is, and I run through the parklands, but that whole western side is completely devoid of attention. From me anyway, as an individual.
You haven't been to the Wirraninthi wetlands in Park 23?
No, I haven't. No.
Well, you should come along to our guided walk on August the
should.
28th in the Wirraninthi wetlands, because it's absolutely spectacular.
And how many guided walks? So that's another thing we do. So let's talk about how the campaign for the parklands and how you achieve that.
Yeah.
Because I think this would be very helpful for. This is I think what you're doing with the. With APA is amazing as almost like a template for other community groups that might want to advocate for something.
Yeah.
So what are some of the things? So you have
we have 4 streams of activity, and we've got a strategic plan which prioritises each one of these 4 streams. They're quite distinct, but they're complementary. People will want to protect the parklands only if they know what's in them. Our 4 streams of activity are, pay attention, explore, inspire, protect, restore. And they're in that order because first you have to explore before you will be inspired.
Okay.
If you're inspired, you will want to protect.
Yes.
Once you know that how important it is to protect, you'll want to restore. So it works in that order. Explore, inspire, protect, restore. So the first thing that gets people interested in the parklands, maybe, it doesn't always have to be this way, of course, but explore. So we offer guided walks. Yeah. Roughly 1 every 2 weeks. In the good months, it could be in the good weather. We might be doing them every week. We've just been planning next year's calendar, and we've got 32 events over the course of 2023 already being planned in the pipeline. But every couple of weeks at the latest, we'll be having a different guided walk in a different part of the parklands. And hopefully, and people will come. If you're an APA member, you get a ticket for free. If you're not a member, it's a fairly low cost day out, afternoon out, and you'll get the history, the explanation, why this bits of parkland is treated this way, what it used to be like in the past, what's going to be happening in this spot in the future. And if it's all very well telling people about it, but until you're standing in, let's say, for example, a stand of 100-year-old blue gums and looking up into the canopy,
you won't appreciate it.
Hopefully seeing, a rosella or a rainbow lorikeet or something above your head. You don't really appreciate the significance of
dawn on you.
Of where you are standing.
Absolutely.
And the fact that these trees were planted by, the city gardener in 1907 or whatever, and they're still there and they're still being looked after. And then you will think, well, wouldn't this be worth protecting?
Right. So you do the guided walks
that's explore.
Yeah. And
the trail guides, so that you can do the guided walk at any time when you want to, are all on our website.
Yeah.
So we've got that resource.
That's handy. Yeah. I think I would love to do them all. Do you get something when you complete them? Do you get like a sticker or?
We'll give you a leaflet when you come along on the guided walk.
Yeah, okay.
And that will have a QR code to link back to the full trail guide. So the leaflet's a bit of a souvenir if you come on the guided walk.
I feel like we need a T-shirt.
Yeah.
Like I've done every guided walk or whatever. I've been everywhere, man, or something.
Yes, that's a good idea.
Yeah. I mean, I have to buy the T-shirt, obviously.
Yeah. Okay, so that's explore.
Right.
Inspire.
Yeah.
The main thing that we're doing with Inspire is the Adelaide Parklands Art Prize.
Yes.
Every 2 years, and that's getting bigger and bigger. We ran it in 2014, 2016, 2018. COVID hit the 2020 version, so it wasn't finished till 2021, but we're doing it again in 2023 with a $50,000 prize pool.
And I believe that makes it Adelaide's or South Australia's third largest art prize.
Equal second.
Equal second, right?
Yes.
Equal second with who?
Now, don't quote me
Who's
on this.
first?
There's the Waterhouse
The
Art
Waterhouse I think,
Prize.
is first.
There's one prize that's way out the front with $100,000, and then there's the Adelaide Parklands Art Prize and one other that are on $50,000.
Yep.
Forget whether the Waterhouse is 100 or 50. Anyway.
Yep. Well, I think it's 100.
Yeah.
I think the Waterhouse is 100.
So,
and that was done by a trust. And so I think this is. So how many entries would you get for the art prize?
Well, we haven't got any yet. But
on an average year.
Last time around, we had, I think it was about 360 entries.
Yep.
And finalists get whittled down to around about 70 odd, because that's how many will fit in the display space at the festival centre.
Yep.
So something similar will be happening in early 2023.
Yep.
Entries will be entries are open on the 15th of August and close on the end of January. So we're hoping we'll get hundreds of entries, whittled down to 70 odd that will be on display in the festival centre from, I think it's near the end of March, March 18, 19, around about that time.
So what I'll do is I'll do a little bit of I'll get Natalia on, who's the convener of it, and I think I'll do a little bit of a 15-minute chat about what the art prize is and what the different options are.
Yeah.
But coming back to it, so the outcome of so it's to inspire. So the idea is that artists will submit works internationally from around the world, and then showcasing the parklands and its beauty. And the idea is to inspire people to love the parklands.
Well, the word inspire is deliberately ambiguous because the artists will be inspired by the parklands.
See, I think you're inspire.
The artists will be inspired by the parklands, but their artworks will inspire others to love the parklands.
Sure.
So the inspire word there does double duty.
It comes both ends. That's great.
Both ends.
Yeah, yeah.
And then the other thing that is part of our strategic plan is protect.
Right. And so there's income that comes from the so you generate, and that helps to fund some of the protecting activities, right?
The income for the Adelaide Parklands Association, we're a small community group. We don't have a huge income by any means. It comes partly from membership fees. We've got fairly low cost membership.
How many members would you have?
As of today, it's around about 412. But you renew for a year, and more people join, others drop off. So well over 400. So membership fees. We get a dividend from the Parklands Art Prize. We raise a little bit of money from the tickets to the guided walks.
Sure.
And some donations.
And of course the Unpaving Paradise concert as well that we did.
We did a gig at Diversity in early June, which raised
that was a great night. I love that.
We'll hopefully do that again next year.
Yeah.
That raised a little bit of money for Restore, which is the fourth part of our strategic plan. Explore, inspire, protect, restore.
Yeah.
Restore is something we're only new at. We haven't done this a lot before in the past.
Yeah.
We have got approval from the City Council to restore a little bit of bitumen in Benithan Park off Port Road near the Theberton tram stop. And that will, if we do a good job with that, they might let us restore a little bit more bitumen somewhere else in the parklands.
Sure. So just chip away at it.
It's a pilot project.
So like the government chips away, you can chip away at the bitumen.
Well, exactly. We don't always have to be on the defensive.
Can I I'll tell you a little bit of a story. When I was younger as well, right? I used to go to Tilapia, which is a school, and we used to have bitumen wars. So we would dig up the bitumen and use it as currency. So we would dig up the netball courts or whatever it was.
Yeah.
So, I'm going to claim that as my young environmentalist, digging up bitumen and restoring it to open space, much to the annoyance of the teachers.
Well, that particular bit of bitumen that I referenced in Benithan Park used to be netball courts.
Yeah, right. There you
Back
go.
in the 1990s, but they haven't been used as netball courts for, decades.
Sure. Yeah.
So that's our and that's only part of what we do for Restore. We also
what
do
about the aquatic centre?
Clean-up days. The aquatic centre.
So that's a good opportunity to restore some parklands.
It's two. It's both protect and restore.
Yes.
Because the state government And we talked earlier about the fact that governments for years and years and years have been chipping away at parklands. And you've got to remember that at the moment, there are at least 4 sites on the parklands that are under threat from state government projects.
Right.
You've got a proposal for a new 8-storey addition to the Botanic High School, which will take away Frome Park in Park 11 off Frome Road.
Mm-hmm.
You've got the proposal for a new Women's and Children's Hospital, which will destroy a garden in Park 27 next to the Royal Adelaide Hospital.
Yep.
You've got a proposal for a multi-storey car park across the railway line in Kate Cox Park, part of Park 27. And you also have a proposal to build a new aquatic centre on Denise Norton Park, Party Nilla Park 2.
Yeah.
So coming back to that one, the 4th, the aquatic centre, and this is both protect and restore. A lot of people have said to me, why don't we just renovate the current aquatic centre because, it needs renovation.
Yeah.
Now, I'm hardly an engineering expert. The last thing I would lay claim to be.
Sometimes it's easier to rebuild these things.
Well, indeed. And the City Council a couple of years ago got a report from an engineer saying it isn't really worth it. It has reached the end of its useful life and needs to be replaced.
Yeah. And, of course, that's very different from normal. So, it was a privately owned. So it's a publicly owned facility.
Well,
the useful life is actually a lot shorter because they have to comply with all the standards and have a much higher rating. But
So the council has been postponing a decision on this because it's a very difficult decision.
Yeah.
But during the election campaign, the then Labor opposition promised that if elected, they would build a new aquatic centre and the state government would run it, not the city council.
Really?
That was the promise made by Peter Malinauskas during the election campaign. And he said the Labor government would build it either on the existing site or, and this is the words used at the time, or an adjacent site. Adjacent was not defined. So they've been elected and their proposal since, just in the last couple of months, July 2022, is that they are only going to be looking at sites within the same park.
So there's such an opportunity for it to go somewhere else.
Well, we're very, very happy that the current site of the aquatic centre is going to be returned to parklands. If you think of the park on which the aquatic centre is located, on Robe Terrace, Jeffcott Road, Barton Terrace West and Prospect Road, that's basically a rectangular area, and the aquatic centre takes up the northwestern corner.
Yeah.
That's going to be returned to parklands. That's fantastic. That's restore. And that's one of the things we are really, really happy about, restoring that area of parklands. Mm-hmm. But then the other sites that the state government is considering, all on the same park, we're saying, why not put it somewhere else? Yeah. Why not put it on a brownfield site, closer to public transport, somewhere that's convenient for people not just in the city of Adelaide, but for any of the suburbs around about. We've got the State Swim Centre down at Marion, so something that would be more convenient for people in the northern suburbs. Mm-hmm. So we conducted our own research asking people, where would you prefer to see it? And we got 600 or 700 responses to our survey, and by far the most popular area was around Hindmarsh, Theberton, Bowden, Brompton. There's
so much space in Bowden for it to go.
Plenty of brownfield sites that could be acquired by the state government for an aquatic centre.
I think state government seem very reluctant to acquire property.
They do it all the time for road widening.
Yeah, they do it. And
very
with the
common.
South Road, that freeway has been, they're doing massive acquisitions there, which are actually unnecessary. I was speaking to an engineer about it, and a lot of it's actually unnecessary, and they're expanding way beyond what they need to because they actually don't know where the tunnel's going to go. But see, something I do like about Canberra is you don't own the land; you only have a 99-year lease.
Yes, Canberra's unusual in that respect.
Yeah. And so it's implied that at some stage the government might take that back and provide infrastructure. But something that I see that Adelaide doesn't necessarily had, and actually Rex Patrick made this point recently, is we don't have a 10 or 20 year plan for the infrastructure that we need for the city. So how many people are we going to have living there, and what do they need? And to me, it seems like, population's increasing, they need a new stadium, so let's just chuck it here. But their converse point is, they actually need more open space, and they need more parklands at the same time as population goes up. So there doesn't seem to me, from what I can see, a long-term vision on that. And I think that would really help And a master plan for the parklands would be something I think would be helpful.
The irony is that there is a master plan for the parklands.
Is there, right?
Well, it's part of the statute law. The Adelaide Parklands Act requires the City Council and the state government to agree on an Adelaide Parklands management strategy.
Yeah.
And they've done that. It's just that the state government pays no attention to it.
Sure.
No part of the Adelaide
What does the Act do? What's the point of the Act?
The Adelaide Parklands Act is pretty useless when it comes to protecting the parklands.
Yeah.
It sets up an Adelaide Parklands Authority, which, despite its name, is an authority that has no authority.
Yeah.
It is a body that merely advises.
Mm-hmm.
It advises the City Council, it advises the state government, but neither the state government nor the City Council is obliged to do what the Parklands Authority recommends.
Right. So how would you change that? What would be your... how could you ameliorate that situation to give them a bit more teeth?
Well, I'd love to see a really wide-ranging discussion with the community about how best to ensure that the parklands that remain don't get further chipped away in the future. There is a whole range of possible governance models, and I'm not necessarily recommending this, but there is, because I really don't know enough about it, but in Central Park, New York, there is a Central Park Conservancy. And I don't know how that is managed, but they've managed to make sure that Central Park stays a park.
Absolutely.
There's no multi-storey schools put in there.
Yeah.
There's
which
no
keep getting expanded.
Yes, there's no hospitals put in there. There's no car parks put in there. It stays as a park. So I would suggest that whatever they've got there to manage Central Park is something that would, we might be able to just take that model and use it here, or there may be some reason why we can't take that model. I don't know, but there's got to be better models for making sure that the Adelaide Parklands that remain, I emphasise remain because we keep losing them day by day by day, well, year by year by year, are still there in 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, and are not chipped away, as we are still in the process of doing.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of, because we don't have that long-term vision that I've seen anyway, about, and that work done to say, well, we could create the most incredible parklands or gardens in the world. So with Central Park, I've never been to New York, but my impression of it is it's the best park in the world. And there's so many movies and things shot there as well, right? It's an absolute showcase for New York.
New Yorkers would be outraged if their park got treated the way the Adelaide Parklands get treated, chipped away all the time.
And I think we should, if we actually had that vision, and it's things like putting in the wetlands or expanding the botanical gardens or creating what could be the most incredible piece of open space there is in the world, and that becomes an attraction. You have to invest in that over time.
Yeah, they're not valued in and of themselves by people in power. I'd like to come back to something that I mentioned earlier, which is infrastructure, a particular type of infrastructure that we've been promoting, but it isn't our idea. And strangely, this has the support of Business SA, the Australian Hotels Association, the Committee for Adelaide. It's got a support across the board. So let me just explain. It's called the Adelaide Recreation Circuit. And this is the idea of one man who's been pushing this for the last few years, beating his head against a wall. It's really very simple. It's just the idea of linking each park with either a tunnel or a bridge under or over every road that separates parks. Like if you want to go from Rymel Park to King Rodney Park just to its south, into Victoria Park just to its south, you've got to go across Bartels Road and Wakefield Road. If there was a bridge or a tunnel that could take you through, then we should have a circuit right around the city and or the North Adelaide parks as well. And Jason Redmond's idea is that this should be illuminated so that it's safe and open 24 hours a day.
Formalised.
Yeah. And it would be, and this idea's got support from Walking SA, from the Roadrunners Club, from Athletics, from Bicycle SA, from Bike Adelaide. People would come from all over the world to participate in events in the only city in the world encircled by parklands where you can ride or run or walk around the entirety, never leaving parklands.
It's so necessary because I run in the mornings and run through through the South Parklands, and crossing the roads is really disturbing, and it's dangerous because you're crossing like 6 6 or 5 different lanes of traffic, and there's
Yeah.
lights going and everything. And
Just to get from one park to the other, let
Yeah.
alone around the whole circuit.
And the ability for you to cross is very difficult. So there's very few crossing spaces as well. So that connectivity and the way that people move through it is also really, really difficult.
Yeah, it would. Jason Redman, who's done some research on this, is trying to get funding for a feasibility study.
Yeah, right.
Just
how much it would
to
cost?
develop a business case. A couple of years ago, he was quoting a figure of $75,000, and I don't know why he can't get commitment from either side of politics and or the city council.
$75,000.
It's not much in the terms of a state government budget.
Pennies, yeah.
Yeah, the former Treasurer, Rob Lucas, ruled it out, and we're hoping that the state Labor government might come to the party with at least a feasibility study.
Yeah.
Jason might be a great person to have on your blog to talk about this in greater depth, because he's done a lot of work on it. He seems to think that a tunnel is cheaper than a bridge, cut and cover, because you don't have very far to do it. You could close the road and open it again within a couple of days.
Yep.
And you would need some way to make sure that the lighting was good, so that nobody felt in danger going under a road.
You could run a whole bunch of different events. I mean, it would be what, 20k circuit?
Well, roughly around the. Well, it depends.
You could do like an Adelaide marathon,
Yes.
and then have a run around the park.
Yeah, without having to close any roads.
That's right, and really open that out, involve Adelaide.
Yeah, and he's wanting to involve the Ghana community and having spots on the circuit where the Ghana were acknowledged, referenced, in some way participated. So that's. And the idea, in terms of helping the parklands, when people can appreciate them as one whole, not just as, we've got Park 15 here, we've got Park 12 over there, we've got Park 6 over in the north.
Yeah.
They're separate parks. They get picked off one by one, or bits
in
them get picked off one by one. But when they're acknowledged as a whole,
maybe that's the major threat.
The world unique.
Yeah, because for me as a user, I definitely see it as a southeast and part of the north of the parklands.
Yeah.
But having that whole ring route would absolutely open up the western side for me anyway.
Yeah. Well,
it's
it's a figure 8 wrapping around the North Adelaide
and
the city.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, you can do a loop of the CBD,
of course,
which is a circle, or you can do a loop of North Adelaide as a circle, or you could take the whole figure 8.
Yeah. But what an amazing thing, if you came to Adelaide as a tourist even and you want to experience it, you hire one of the bikes, the e-bikes even, and go for a tour around Adelaide, and you'd see all of that. And you can even have then a trail, because we've got so much amazing stuff happening. Yeah. You could go and do a trail and stop in at the zoo or the wine centre, and that could then become a part of that, and then have the Adelaide Marathon, or I don't know, how long is a marathon?
A marathon is 42.2 kilometres.
There you go. So half marathon.
Yeah.
You can make it 21.
Two loops.
That's right.
Yeah. There is a Parklands trail,
Yeah.
but it's not very well signposted, and it requires you to cross a lot of roads.
For sure. That's right.
And a couple of train lines too, I think.
Yeah,
At least
absolutely. Once. So just coming back to the restore point as well. So what else, my view would be that the aquatic centre should go into Bowden. What else do you think we could do?
Hindmarsh?
Yeah, sure.
Oh, well, we also do a Clean Up a Park Day twice a year.
Yep.
So we do it on Clean Up Australia Day and another day in September,
what else
October.
do you reckon we could restore to natural?
Well, how long have we got to talk, Henry? Because we've got dozens.
How long have we got, Han? About 5 minutes? 2 minutes?
Well, there are a lot of buildings that have been put on parklands, and suggesting that a building should be demolished is very controversial. But
I think they've got the skate park right on.
The skate park is almost finished
on
completion. There's a skate park that's being constructed now in Park 25.
Yeah. But the eastern side skate park.
We've got a once in a generation opportunity with the aquatic centre, because that is going to be demolished. It can't stay. And so that's the greatest opportunity for restoration at the moment, because both the state government and the city council agree that spot is going to be restored to parklands. There are a lot of bitumen places, and it's a lot easier to propose reinstalling something green in what was bitumen than it is to knock down
Rundle Street, couldn't you? Because that's been closed for 12 weeks now. Nobody seems to mind.
Don't tell Rundle Street traders. But no, there's a lot of bitumen car parks that don't need to be there, and I was really, really happy to see that Cattle Tiller, the Parklands Authority, only a few weeks ago decided that when a new sports building is put in Golden Wattle Park off Goodwood Road, that there will be no car parks associated with that new building in that park, that there's plenty of car parking on Goodwood Road or on South Terrace for people. But yeah, there's a lovely little video that we've got on APA's YouTube channel. Unpaving Paradise is the name of the video, and it goes through and shows you all of the spots in the parklands where there are car parks.
Yeah. So the last point I'd also like to make, which is something that in Burnside, I'm a city councillor there. There's been a real pressure to put in and pave a large area, and often people who are advocates for open green space, they're seen as negative or saying no to everything and saying no to development. And something you inspired me was, well, no, you're saying yes to keeping. You're saying yes to retaining what we have. Yeah.
Sometimes the Adelaide Parklands Association is characterised as being negative, and that's not true
because David Spears said that.
Well,
which is so not true. It's, and he's the environment minister, and you're there saying we love our parklands, let's keep them.
Yeah, we're not negative because we have different values.
Yeah.
We are very, very positive about what we value.
Absolutely.
And we could easily just turn that around the other way and say, if you want to put a big building on parklands, then you're being negative about the parklands.
Exactly right. Last point, you have a record. What's it in? Because this is incredible.
We're totally changing here. We're not talking about parklands. We're talking about
it's my final plug for Shane's amazing abilities.
Because I am such a determined person, and I love cycling. And I'm not really fast. I have tried racing, and veteran cyclist, masters cycling racing is horrific. Those people are really, really fast.
Yeah, right.
So I've got endurance.
Yeah.
So I am the current world record holder in a rather obscure event called Everesting 10K, which involves riding your bike up a hill repeated times until you've reached more than the height of Everest. In fact, 10,000 metres, hence the 10K. That's not 10K of distance. That's 10K of altitude. So in December last year, I rode up and down Old Wollonga Hill 41 times over 26 hours and exceeded 10,000 metres in altitude. And my record is not that I did it or that I was the fastest. It's that I'm the oldest person in the world to have been stupid enough to do that.
Great.
So the record is 65 years, 10 months, which was my age when I did it.
Amazing. Well, there you go. So thank you so much, Shane, for coming on my podcast. You are an inspiration to me and someone who's still fighting for that. You have this absolute determination. I think that's showcased by your world record. I'm sure you'll do it again someday, maybe in a couple of years, because you want to.
Oh, there's another world record that I'm after, which is held by somebody in Canada, but that's another story.
Yeah, right. Well, I'll have you back on. But thank you so much for your passion about the parklands. That's absolutely inspired me. And I think so many people, whether they know it or not, I really do appreciate all the work that you do.
Yeah, and so many people either do love the parklands or would if they knew what we had.
Exactly.
And we would love to welcome them as members.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, Shane.
Thanks, Henry.